Joining me today is Erica Gerard Di Bona. Her book that we're going to be discussing today is A Letter is Better, The Art of Thank You. In a world of text, DMs, and disappearing messages, one woman is bringing back the lost art of the thank you note, typing over 1,000 letters a year on vintage typewriters, and the results are nothing short of extraordinary. Erica Gerard Di Bona explores why expressing gratitude in writing doesn't just make someone feel appreciated, it strengthens relationships, boosts mental well being, and even opens unexpected professional doors. Erica is a former producer in network news, the Playboy Channel, documentaries, and kids' game shows. She's often received letters and messages back from such notables as Connie Chung, Lear, and Henry Winkler. Welcome to the show. Nice to have you on, Erica.
Thank you so much. Happy April Fool's Day.
Happy April Fool's Day. I hope we don't have to deal with that on the show, but afterwards it's okay, right?
Right.
Okay, a letter is better, the art of thank you. Let's talk about what does that mean, the art of thank you? Why the art of thank you in writing a letter as opposed to, say, the art of thank you in sending off an email?
Well, frankly, an email doesn't have any artistry to it. It's usually just all words. Maybe you can put some memes in there, but I think it's not received as well as getting something that's pretty and colorful, but also is something that you can keep forever. I can delete an email if somebody sends it to me. I also can forget a text, but a letter stays on my desk. So I also believe in stamps and pretty stationery and doing whatever you can to get the person's attention and having fun with it.
Yeah, I think also another thing with emails, you can miss an email. You get so many emails, right? You get bombarded, but you will never, especially today, miss an actual letter, right? That's in print. Yeah.
Yes.
I very seldom received first of all, just getting a thank you note is a good thing today, but let alone getting it in hard copy, that's a whole different, for certain generations particularly, it's a whole different ball game, I think, anyway.
Well, and getting it typed is also even more extraordinarily rare. So some people have never even seen a typed letter that I've mailed them to. They run their
Yeah.
finger over the print on the envelope and they're bewildered by what this is.
So then we, the general public, okay, you have a typewriter, like you say, most people don't have typewriters, so we can't
Right.
do that. That's not practical.
Right.
Right. So, but we can write letters, by hand. Um, so how does that, you talk about how that makes, I think I said that in the intro, how that makes connections between people. And it's different than emails. If you write a personal note and then with relatives or friends, but you say also professionally. So how does that work?
Well, professionally, my job now, the last 10 years or so, has been as a fundraiser, but I call myself a friend raiser. So I'm trying to open doors to get meetings for executives and chancellors and the dean and things from UC Santa Cruz. And that's hard to get somebody booked for a meeting, especially when they know they're going to be asked for money down the line. So I said, I won't do the money part. I'll do the opening the door. And so what I do is I will send a typed letter, and it can be from the computer. It doesn't have to be on a typewriter. And you can choose a cool font, like I have American Typewriter as my font. But I can underline a few words and make it more personal or on personalized stationery or something that reflects who I am. But I will send a typed letter to the person I'm trying to get a meeting with. And then I also, Kathryn, will scan it and email it. So you may have seen the email and it went down in the queue, but a day or so later, you're going to get my snail mail and that'll stay on your desk. And, I had John Landgraf of Fox Studios have a letter from me 9 months later. He wrote me back and he said, I've had it on my desk all this time. I always return a letter. And then they donated money. So I do think that there is something to keeping it real and keeping it in real form.
Yeah. So that's very practical. And because I was going to ask you, if somebody gets like a typed letter, they may think, is this for real or is this a fake? Is this really from her? That might be my first response. But then if you back it up with an email, that would solve that issue, right? So, okay, let's talk about the emotional, because you discussed that, how the emotional benefits of writing a thank you note for the sender and the receiver.
Well, I would say probably Not to bring down our morning talk here, but probably the most significant thank you that I ever wrote was to my mother as she lay dying. And I had gotten the word from my sister that I needed to get up to Palo Alto fast. I live in Los Angeles. I had written my mother already a Thanksgiving card that was basically a thank you letter to her. And I grabbed it out of the mailbox and took it up with me by hand. My sister said, "You better get in the room right away." I was like, "Oh, I'm sort of scared. I don't want to do it." She said, "You need to. We don't know how long she has." So I walked in and I had a 2.5-page typed single-spaced letter thanking my mother for all that she had done for the 4 kids and what she had taught us and the moral compass she had instilled in us. And I read that letter out loud to her and put it away, kissed her, and then walked out of the room. And 20 minutes later, she passed away.
That's a good story. Not that she passed away, but in this.
But I didn't know, the thing is, I didn't know what I would be able to say. And
Yeah.
sort of having a script there of my
Yeah.
feelings that I'd already worked on was helpful. And I think that it made me have some closure that I was able to say to her what I wanted to.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you said it to her when she was alive. Most of us, we wait till the funeral and then you're reading all this stuff that you're writing about the person and they don't hear it. So, yeah, we have to, should we get in the habit of doing that, I guess? That's a great idea. I got a letter from, this was probably a few years ago. My father had been a captain in the Navy in World War II, never talked about it. And we didn't really know too much about what he did. He was on a subchaser. But anyway, the bottom line is that one of the young men who had been under him on the ship wrote a long letter to me and my brothers saying how he had saved their lives. And he went on and on. He had a 2-page letter. I knew nothing about that. And that's, I think, an example of what you're talking about. And, I could quote the letter, not really, but word for word. Yeah.
But he filled in for you a part of your father's life that you had not heard directly from your father. And that was a beautiful gift. That's also, I have a chapter in my book about condolences. And I think people freeze when they have to write condolences. And I'm saying it's okay to write about who you know that person to have been, or give the person who died, their child, a story about the father or mother that they may not have known, and to bring them alive again in that, because you were able to piece together a different view of your father that way. Thanks to him. That was a beautiful gift that man gave you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing that you just touched on it, but you can write a draft of a letter. You can, just put down your thoughts, not think about that you're writing, the correct English or the correct form, and then sit down and come back to it later, which is another thing. So you think about, well, maybe I want to change things. You just send off an email and that's it. And
well, also, I think that people tend to feel like they have to have a letter be perfect. And I think a letter doesn't need to be as formal. It should be just a first draft, final draft in some cases. Maybe for condolence, that's more thoughtful, and you need to really think about what the message is that you're trying to say. But really, you're trying to say, I love the person who died, and I love you. And you're not alone. I'm thinking of you. And give that person a card to stand. But I think it's not something we should agonize over. I think people have gotten out of the habit of writing letters, if they even were taught how to. And I've taught kids who didn't even know, Kathryn, how to fold a piece of paper into thirds to put into an envelope. And then they didn't know how to address the envelope or where to get a stamp. That's how far afield we've gotten from teaching correspondence, classic U.S. post office correspondence anymore. And I'm saying it's still a viable form. I think it can have an impact in the right situations.
Well, do you think, you're doing it, you've written the book, obviously. Are there other people who are doing it, reintroducing, actually writing a handwritten letter, or not?
Well, I just gave a copy of my book to Jane Fonda, who lives near where I am, and we have the same trainer. And I'd always been afraid to talk to her. I was like, this is a major, for me, a fangirl moment. And then she came in the gym and she watched me working out for a few minutes, and I said, well, maybe I should give her a copy of my book to further the relationship a bit. So I sent one over to her house, and she wrote me a card back, and she said, I love the importance of handwriting letters, and in fact, I just am going to start a movie based on the book The Correspondent. And she said, I'm playing the letter writer and I'm producing it. And then she wrote a big heart and Jane. So I was pretty thrilled about that. But that was, somebody saying the importance of handwriting and just letters in general. I think that book has been #1 on the book's top seller list for a long time.
Yeah, well, Jane Fonda has a big, no matter what she does, right? She has a huge impact. So that's great. But you also, not just Jane Fonda, I think you said you have gotten messages or letters from Connie Chung. Did I read that in the interview?
Yes.
Yeah, intro. Yes. And Henry Winkler and Norman Lear. So tell me, I love Norman Lear. Tell me about him. What was it? Can you tell us the message?
Yeah, Norman Lear, as you're saying, was one of the best, I think, one of the best producers ever. And at one point in the 70s, every show there were 3 networks only, and he would have shows on that beat everything else consistently, All in the Family and the Jeffersons and Maude. And so we were invited to his house. My husband's on the board of Emerson College, where he went for undergrad. And they were trying to fundraise, and they invited us other Emerson people to Norman Lear's house. So we wound up this really tall, street in Bel Air, got there, and we're welcomed with a glass of champagne, and then we walked past the swimming pool with lilies on the pond, and it was just really a lot to take in. I sort of was overwhelmed. So I walked off to the side and let everyone mingle and talk Emerson. And I took it in for a minute. And I looked down, and there were all these little houses below, and with the stars twinkling and the lights twinkling in their houses. And I thought, at one moment, he was reaching all of those homes and having an impact and getting his message across. And the best writer and the best overseer of writing of anyone at that point. And he had longevity. He kept doing it. So when the party was over, then we're driving home, and I thought, oh no, now I have to write a letter to Norman Lear.
Okay, this is the big test to Norman
Lear. Big test. Yeah. I knew who it was. I thought, well, Erica, I can bet you no one else is going home to write him a thank you on a typewriter. Yeah. So right away, I have that. And that was my little bit of confidence. And I can tell you another story about my first letter to President Kennedy. But that made me think, well, I'm just going to do it. And so I wrote him about my impression of how he was at the top of the mountain and what he has done in his life and how much he's given all of us. And I sort of clutched my pearls and mailed it off. And a few days later, I got a message on my voice message machine on my landline. Remember those? And it was Norman Lear saying, I just got your letter, and my dear, I don't know what to say. It's the most beautiful letter I've ever gotten, and please call me. And that was worth it to me.
Did you call him?
I did. I did.
Okay, well, those are notables, needless to say, but you also just mentioned Kennedy, John Kennedy.
No, yeah, John Kennedy, the dad, not Junior.
Yes, yeah.
And although Junior is the top of everyone's mind right now if they're watching that love story. So John F. Kennedy was when I was in first grade. I've just turned 70. So that was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I was already sort of a worried little first grader. I had heard my dad had been in the Holocaust, and I didn't feel like life was as safe as one should imagine in first grade. And then we were all learning how to duck and cover under our desks because of the Cuban Missile Crisis. So I came home and I was worried about it. My mother said, no, it's crisis averted. We're all safe. I said, oh, good. And she said, but you know what? Maybe you should write a letter to the president and thank him for making us safe. It's like, okay. So I wrote a letter and we mailed that off. And a few weeks later, I walked home from school. My mother was waving a big white envelope in her hands, and it was a letter from the president with a picture of him and a letter thanking me, which unfortunately I don't have. I wish I had that somewhere in my mother's files, but it's not there. But I pasted that letter and that picture of him over my bed, and I looked at that every morning and every night for a long time. And it made me think, I'm just a little girl, but I can write to the president and he'll write back. And I think that went a long way toward instilling confidence in me that my message was important and that somebody would like to hear it. And whether they respond or not now, I say I just send a letter with no intent of a response. If somebody likes it and wants to say something, that's great. I don't expect a response in return. It's just
Now
sending
let's
out a little good thought in the universe. So that's part of what I do too.
And what can the rest of us do in terms of, like, because you talk about connections, well, those are very famous people, and
Yeah.
we've talked to, but now let's get to, like, you say you can make really good connections. Say thank you to your dentist or your doctor or your
Yeah.
maybe your lawyer. I'm not sure, but
Yes. Depends if they did well for
yeah,
you or not.
exactly. That's a maybe. But okay, so how can we do that and make that a really positive connection for both of us, the professional and those of us who are writing the letter?
Well, I say to write to the gatekeeper as well, the person that booked you the appointment with the dentist when it was hard to get in to see him. Thank them, and then it'll be easier the next time that you want an appointment. I've gone many times to doctors or dentists after I've written them a letter and they're looking through my files, or if they still have paper files, and there's my letter in amongst them. I've had thanks to doctors who took care of my father when he was really ill, and that I was able to appreciate him. And I'm sure that a lot of people don't take time to write thank you letters to their doctors, and that they work hard, and you want to have them on your side. So I don't think well, no, I actually probably have written a letter to my dentist, come to think of it.
Yeah.
But it's everybody can use a thank you.
Everybody can use a thank you, and it does, as you say, it makes you feel good, the one who's writing the letter. And then it also, anybody that you're writing to, well, that's a thing. Okay, now, but what about this? You talk about your 3-paragraph me, you, and us format for crafting a well-written thank you note. Although you did say it doesn't have to be so well-written. Don't think about that so much, but this kind of implies that we do need to think about what we're writing or how we're writing it.
Well, I came upon this idea of me, you, and us because I think people were overthinking it and getting themselves paralyzed. And so it's really just sort of a hint of how to get started. The me is the moment that I received the gift, or my reaction to what you did for me, and it takes us back into that moment together. I typically start the letter with the word when, so I can frame it. And when I received the package of cheeses from you, I was overwhelmed because I've been craving Munster and I haven't been able to find it anywhere. Or something that gets you to the moment where you received the gift or had the interaction. Then the you part is sort of a thanks for being you. That's where I let the person know how important they are to me, what they did for me that was meaningful, how they have made an impact on me. But it's really feeding back to the person, what a wonderful experience it was, Kathryn, with you this morning when you allayed my fears about talking on camera, and you explained to me that we could just talk on radio, and you were very, very thoughtful in all of your questions. Then the last part is us, and us is taking it into the future together. Where are we going from here, if we are? But I wrap it up that way, thanking you, and I say thank you at the end. I don't use the words thank you at the beginning of the letter, because then you've blown the lead. So we know you're working toward thank you. Just say thank you near the end. And so the when, starting with when, ending with thank you, and then having paragraph about myself, about you, and then us together is, I think, the easiest way to do it.
And when you go through that process, do you ever keep writing back and forth? I mean, have there been relationships where you start with a thank you and then they respond, whoever that is, and then you keep on going?
Yes, I have had that. The people get so emotional having received a
What is
personal
this?
thank you.
Who is
They'll
this
write
lady?
a thank you for
Yeah.
the thank you. And it does sort of get sort of ad infinitum. And I have a lot of also I have a lot of pen pals. So I've had pen pals since the age of 4 that I've been writing to. One little girl's in college and she just wanted a typewriter. That's the other part of my messaging. I do it on a typewriter, which I also don't expect anybody to run out and buy a typewriter, but a lot of people have. So I think that's unique too, to get a typewritten letter. And I think everybody is worthy of a thank you in any format you want to do it.
Well, I know at camp, I always went to sleepaway. They forced you to write a letter. You had to write, you had to write a letter home saying how great everything was. They let you fill in the blanks. So that was probably one of the first experiences of writing letters. But
that was learning propaganda.
Yeah, that was learning propaganda. That's exactly what it was. Oh my God. But but the other thing, this is really important, though, I think, and we touched on it, but you save these letters. You don't save emails, or you can't even remember if you got them, if you've gotten so many. So saving them, revisiting them, like you say, revisiting the relationship, and as you get older, I think maybe it becomes more important. But yeah, I think that's one of the real key pluses of writing letters and having it, in writing.
Well, I think that some of us who are older were taught, we could be pen pals with somebody when we were
Yeah.
young. And I've had many pen pals over the years at all ages. And I think getting a letter in the mail that's not a bill or not just a junk mail is exciting. And it still takes a moment to open it up and say realize that person was thinking of me.
This is kind of practical because I eat out a lot living in New York City. So restaurants, you say you can even write to the restaurant directly and say what a great whatever it was. I mean, do you get better service each time? I mean, you live in LA. Do you do that?
Yes, I do. I have a deli that I know the owners of, and I've written them several letters over the years. I've written not as many for if I don't know the person, but once I learn their name, then I will often write them a thank you because it's better service. Selfishly, it's not just to thank them, it's also hopefully to put me in a little bit of a notch above everybody else, so when they see me, they have a warmer spot in their heart for me.
So write to the maitre d', the one who's going to give you the table. And then I was thinking about, you're talking about the doctor's office, not necessarily can write to the doctor, but you can write to the person who booked the appointment. That's a better way of writing and being appreciated, the person who's there, but then maybe you do get better perks, which isn't a bad thing, right?
Not a bad thing. And everybody likes getting thanked. Most people, I guess 99%, I'll say. Maybe some people don't care or need it, but I think that there's still a value to it.
What's the reaction of your friends and your family in terms of you doing this? I mean,
well, I think my friends have known me to be writing letters
forever.
Our whole relationship. In fact, I just saw yesterday a friend of mine from 7th grade. She lives in Boston. She was out here in Los Angeles visiting her brother. And she and I learned how to type at the same time. And we would go in my mother's office and type. One of us would type and the other would go in the kitchen and eat. And then we'd change positions and type back. So we say we invented email. But we've been typing and writing letters to each other since 7th grade. And I think it's a way of really deepening a relationship if you take time to sit down and type. I've had, go ahead.
Because we only have a couple minutes left, but how can you distinguish now with AI, whether you're getting a thank you note from AI or you're getting the thank you note from the person themselves? Even if they write it, it can be an AI thank you note.
Well, that's a good question, and I have not really pondered that. I guess I should explore that a little bit more. I would hope that a personal letter reflects different verbs that you use or different actions that you share together, or that has something that distinguishes it from being AI created. I don't know. What would you say about that?
No, I agree with you. I think that's the best answer. I mean, you've got to make sure you have something personal in there that really defines the relationship between you and that person, so that it doesn't come out this kind of perfect AI thank you note or generic note to a doctor, or generic note to to the restaurant or whatever. No, I think, and that takes time to to do that. And I think people after a while will be able to recognize that, that it's not an AI generated thank you note. Couple minutes left. So this is fascinating. Erica Gerard Di Bona, and the title of her book, that's who I've been talking to, is A Letter is Better. So, okay, so Erica, tell us where we can go to get more information, buy the book.
Well, I'm self-publishing, so I have it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Ingram Spark. I have a YouTube, it's email that's, or no, I guess what's called website, artofthankyou.com. And it's sort of funny because they're saying, how many followers do you have? And I said, I type letters. I'm analog. I have to build up some followers here.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my
So
gosh.
we're working on that. I have somebody helping me with the social media site. But it's, I know it's a slow build, but it's like, for me, it's a lifetime of writing letters, and I have endless supply. I love writing people. I think it's transformative. It gets people excited when they realize they can add a personal touch to something, and it distinguishes them. It elevates them from the herd.
Yeah. Well, I told this, my grandson, and he's in elementary school, that I was interviewing you. He said, that is a great topic. And we discussed it. He thought it was fantastic. So that's the 2 generations down, right? So I think you're on the right track. Yeah.
Now you can take him to a typewriter store in New York. Let him play on one and get him one. How old is he?
He's 10.
Oh, he's right there.
He's right there. He's he's ready for it. I'll do that.
And that's pen pals. That was the first thing that got me turned on to it too. Was my grandfather was my pen pal, and he wrote me every week. So, and I wrote him back until he died. The last week of his life, there was a letter from me sitting on the hospital bed table right next to his bed. And I realized, oh, he can't read it. So I opened it up and I read it to him. And that was our last interaction.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the interview. This was really good. I really enjoyed it. Erica Gerard Di Bona, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'll write you a letter.
Write me a letter. I'm waiting for your thank you note. Okay, good.
Okay, I'll work on it right away. Right. Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you.
Joining me today is Sara Hirsch Bordo. She's the author of Autoimmunity and the Good Girls: How Permission to Put Ourselves First Has the Power to Keep Us Well. For generations, women have been conditioned to prioritize others, silence their voices, and neglect their own needs. In her latest work, Sara Hirsch Bordo addresses a critical gap in women's wellness: the power of self-permission to speak, transform, and heal. Drawing on more than 50 hours of interviews, she explores why women often minimize their own suffering and health concerns and offers a path toward self-prioritization. Her new book encourages women to put themselves first, alongside her limited edition podcast, Behind the Page: Autoimmunity and the Good Girls, which is launching March 30th, which launched, I guess, yesterday, right? She's an award-winning filmmaker and founder of Women Rising, recognized for leading a purpose-driven, innovative, women-led company. And she's currently directing short documentary films for Toyota and SPN Women, and most recently served as executive producer of the Connect Her International Film Festival. That's quite a resume. Welcome to the show, Sara. Nice to have you on.
Thank you, Kathryn, so much for inviting me, and congratulations on your really beautiful and vital body of work.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So I'm trying to, I guess, kind of live out what you're telling us to do, right? Just don't be, hopefully. So don't be a good girl. We've been taught to be good girls. Are you saying we're still doing that? I mean, I know, my grandmother's generation, my mother's generation, my generation, and we don't seem to get the message. Or why do we continue to do that? And it's not good for our health, mental or physical.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll start with, just for all of the listeners, I think we tend to teach the things that we need to learn. And for me, I know that I only arrived at this body of work from my own lived experience. I'm not, an expert just trying to instill or evangelize research. I am a recovering good girl myself. I've been a documentary of women and filmmaker of women and girls stories for about 15 years through my production company, Women Rising, and thank you for that beautiful introduction as well. I think that a lot of us are living out subconscious conditioning. And for me, it really didn't become realized or almost an insight that I really wanted to dig a little bit deeper with until I started receiving many, many, many health diagnoses, all catalyzed by receiving a diagnosis for Hashimoto's, which is one of over 100 autoimmune conditions. Other autoimmune conditions that folks might know of are MS, or celiac disease, or irritable bowel, or lupus, or again, Hashimoto's or Graves' or Sjogren syndrome, and the list continues to go on and on. Endometriosis is also classified as an autoimmune disease, and this is a list that I've really looked to the very, very brilliant and sage folks at the Autoimmune Association, and that full list is available at autoimmune.org. But for me, I just started noticing, Kathryn, that the women and friends that around me were also being diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. We were all either the eldest or the only daughter in our family growing up. And I just found that fascinating. I'm as a documentary filmmaker, by work, and I'm much more comfortable on your side of the microphone. So I'm a little jealous of you.
Yeah.
I'm a little jealous of you right now because I have so many questions that I want to ask you. But for me, I just started noticing these trends. And I think if you're curious, as a lot of us are by nature, you just start to sort of see these invisible threads that that make you want to know more and dig a little bit deeper. So I actually did a focus group amongst Women Rising's beautiful community of women and male allies alike. And sure enough, out of 300 women that were diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, 70% were either the eldest or the only daughter. And I did that research over 6 years ago. And
Okay, so that's kind of is scientific research. That's right.
that
Or
was
based on,
a focus group that I did, but I knew that if I wanted to sort of talk about this conversation at scale, I knew I was going to need to put some meaningful resources behind it. So I actually funded it out of my own savings. And this was 1,000 American women that I did at the end of 2023 with an incredible very long-standing research company called Proof Insights. And after that research of 1,000 American women that really validated, Kathryn, my early curiosities.
can I just stop you
Mhm.
there? Because I want to know what's the difference, just to get a context for it. What about men when they're diagnosed, or how often are they diagnosed with, say, autoimmune uh, diseases, as the ones that you
Right.
just described?
So
Yeah.
as of today, and this continues to actually rise, 80% or more of the diagnoses of autoimmune conditions are in a female body.
Okay.
And with that 80%, and that's my lived experience. So I have very much stayed um, in sort of the female reflective, both quantitative and qualitatively, because with an autoimmune disease and an autoimmune condition, and many, many, many of us living with that. And my research proved out that over 1 in 4 are being diagnosed with an autoimmune.
Okay. So
And there
now
isn't a cure for a single one.
okay, so there's no cure, or no cure that we know about, except perhaps maybe if we put ourselves first, right? And sort of,
That's certainly how I
yeah,
changed my own health.
yeah.
Yes.
And so, how did you do that?
hmm So at first, I really wanted to understand how an autoimmune condition works. So basically, if you think about our immune system, when it's in its wholeness and it's in its most, um, let's say, perfect state, it can identify cells that are not good against cells that are good. And an immune system that is healthy and active and vital and functioning perfectly knows the difference. An autoimmune condition is in an immune system that basically can't recognize the good cells from the bad cells. And so, in essence, our immune system is at war with itself. So I found that fascinating, Kathryn. And as a documentary filmmaker who I've been telling other women and girls stories around issues like bullying and sexual assault and chronic pelvic pain with women's issues, I just found the story that the immune system with an autoimmune body fascinating, because it said to me that the immune system was, in essence, having an identity crisis if it couldn't recognize itself. So I thought to myself, well, should have I recognized myself? Is my identity as Sara? Have I always known what I've needed, who I am, how to listen to my own needs? And it's a hard realization when you're the one that a lot of women for years have looked to as one of their guiding lights for around female empowerment. And I realized here I am living with an autoimmune disease, also with 4 new diagnoses, everything from breast tumors to ovarian cysts to active Epstein-Barr and early stage melanoma. I thought this is the reckoning that I have needed. And that's a
But you don't
terrifying
present the
place.
but you
Mhm.
don't present a picture, because I'm trying to visualize this, but here you
Mm.
are,
Mhm.
you're out there, you're performing, you're successful, you're doing all these kinds of things.
I like
Not
to think not as a storyteller. I'm not a performer, to be sure.
okay. Well, but in a different, okay, well, in a different way, but you are not, I mean, and that in a sense, putting yourself first in terms of
It
following
is
your
now.
talent, your
Yeah.
passion. Yeah, it is now,
Yeah.
but it
It is
wasn't
now.
always. But it
It
wasn't
was
always.
not. I was so passionate about telling other women and girls stories for the impact of an audience, for the empowerment of, attendees at a women's march or at a wellness summit. And I've been behind the scenes directing those for a long, long time. And I just realized that maybe I had been a fraud in that work. Here I am putting all of these events on, but maybe secretly and truly and cellularly, I was actually creating them for myself. So when I began this work with all these diagnoses, and COVID happened, and I was in essence locked in, as so many of us were. I had just broken up, and with, you know, to that point, the love of my life. I was in an apartment office with a bunch of white walls and unopened boxes of all of my things, but with a body full of disease. And that catalyzed my not only investigation, but research amongst myself, and then more and more and more women over the years to come. That has resulted in me reprogramming and healing myself from the inside out. And now all of my diagnoses are either in remission or have disappeared.
So how did you do that? I mean, as you're describing it, perfect
So,
storm, right?
so
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely right. So when I started peeling back the onion, I started thinking about, okay, if my body can't recognize itself, then let me start recognizing it. Number one, am I compromising my own comfort to say yes to things because of my habitual people pleasing? 100%.
Okay,
I
give us
mean,
examples of that. Because like
sure.
as I'm talking to you,
Come
you
out
don't
to
yeah, don't
again,
sound like a people pleaser.
well,
Not
blessings
now.
to you for
Yeah.
that, but again,
Yeah.
not now. I mean, you're very much talking to, let's say, the most whole version of Sara that's ever been here. If you were kind enough to invite me to your interview party 4 years ago, you would have been talking to a very different Sara, a Sara that um, was very happy to silence my own needs or wants to the comfort of others. That could have been anything from going to a party because I felt guilted, to laughing at a joke that I didn't think was funny, to saying yes to helping someone with their problems or their needs, even though I was operating on empty and was really, really functioning from a very empty well. I
Those are
think that
such good. I want to stop you because those are such good examples, because that's the everyday stuff that we're confronted with all the time.
indeed,
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah. And yeah, so go on.
So I just started to think about, okay, well, and one of my experts that I ended up interviewing for the book says it so beautifully. She said, well, if we can be programmed one way, then why can't we be reprogrammed another way? And that really was at the crux of, in essence, using myself as a guinea pig to see if disempowerment and living from a place of really, if I can, and this might have a charge to it for the listeners, but if I've been conditioned to play out a duty from girlhood to be the consummate caretaker, the people pleaser, the girl with no needs, and very much a relationship, Kathryn, where I felt loved when I was told I was good.
That I think that's very, as you say, it's not unique to you, obviously. I
No.
think that, no, not at all. Yes, that confusing. Someone once said confusing like need with value. Women get hooked into the feeling that if they're needed, that's a very positive thing, but they're not necessarily valued in terms of, like you're saying yes,
Yes,
caregiving.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes. But if we all, as let's say little girls in grown-up aprons, right? Which is,
yeah,
that was that's an image that, like, I was that girl.
yeah,
I'm the eldest daughter. I have twin younger brothers. When, my brothers came around, I was 3.5. I had two hands to hold, one of my mom's and one of my dad's. And then my brothers were born and their hands were taken. I went from feeling very much loved as little Sara just because I was alive and a
yeah,
part of a family, into having a very confusing relationship with love, because then that was replaced by feeling loved when I was good or in service of the needs of my family. And I know that there's a lot of nodding happening amongst your listeners as I say that, because I have seen it. And
yeah,
I've seen it, and I have hugged these women as we have sat on the floor in my apartment weeping, right, for these
yeah,
little versions of us that really didn't have the opportunity to be authentically them. They played out a role that was in service of their family, and that was our family's needs, right? It was
yeah.
what was needed so the family could function. And I know in your incredible work around social work and families, you've seen a lot of dynamics with, let's say, how birth order plays into that, let's say, identity shaping.
I think that's true. And I can be more personal. I think that's true in my own family. I also had two younger brothers.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so very much identify with all of that. And
Mhm,
in order
mhm,
to be recognized, and, I don't think that and, obviously this is anecdotal, but
mhm,
they didn't feel that they had to do something or that they didn't want to do. Some of the examples that you gave in the beginning, where I
mhm.
played right in, yes, did exactly that.
Yes,
Going to a party I don't want to go to, or, simple things, but they add up. And then you get that perfect storm as you described it.
they add up because it is what we have been telling our body that is, quote, real for decades. And when we start asking ourselves the why we do things, we start to step into a place where authenticity can finally be in the room. I use the word permission in the subtitle of my book, and this is my first book, and it's a long time coming, and I really hope very much that it's in service of women listening, to help them walk a little bit closer and closer to the true home of themselves.
Do you know, and I
Um,
want to ask you this. I don't know that when you were doing all of these interviews, these 50
yeah,
hours of interviews,
there were more,
um,
but yes.
yeah, or more, 50
Yeah.
plus, yeah. But what about, and I think this is unfortunately, for instance, the baby boomers aging, and you find that there are so many, the issue of caregiving is a huge
Yes,
issue in this
huge.
country right now. And you find that, women tend to stick around and do the caregiving when it's needed. And even if they are, whether they have financial difficulty, it doesn't matter.
Of
They stick,
course.
they stay, and caregivers die
Yes.
statistically before the person who they're caring for dies. That's sort of an example of what you're talking about, maybe in the extreme, or maybe not.
Well, I thank you for bringing that forward. And I would actually love to peel back the onion of that research. Maybe you can share it with me offline.
Okay.
But I think that the second piece that I found really powerful. And all of the research, Kathryn, that I'm talking about, I funded it, and then I made the key findings available for free, because I wanted, if they could support women now with having a bit more of an aha, then I really wanted that. And everybody can download that for free at autoimmunesurvey.com. But the second layer was that it was the women who identified as the girlhood caretaker. And I'm talking about the girlhood version of the grown-up caretaker that you're talking about, but I'll get there in just a half sec. But I think that the girlhood caretakers, they are hardwired, and my hand is up because I was one of them, and so if women are listening and they recognize themselves in that, we were handed a role and a sense of duty that has just graduated to and with us as we have matured. And I believe that it is the caretaker community from girlhood that actually is the dominant, let's call it, personality of those of us that are living with autoimmune. We are spectacularly good at caretaking, but what that makes very difficult is that when it is finally time for us to receive, and by receiving, I'm talking about a compliment, help getting up from a chair, help going to receive our meds or physical therapy, we are deeply uncomfortable with receptivity. But that is a huge part of where our body and our immune system stays out of balance. If we can't, little bit by little bit, become more comfortable with receiving. Because in my research, I found even out of the massive percentage, and it was more than half of the women who were diagnosed, that were raised as a girlhood caretaker, 84% say that they find it uncomfortable to receive help, compliments, or generosity within their care, of living with a chronic condition.
Yeah.
And I think that is a frightening place to not only speak to, but I want it to empower us all as this community. It doesn't have to stay that way. Yes, it
Yeah.
might be uncomfortable because we have lived a lifetime of giving over than receiving, but we cannot get well or walk us to a place where even wellness is in the room unless we can slowly train ourselves to say, yes, thank you, or will you help me with this? And it can start as the smallest moment of someone saying, nice shirt. And instead of saying, oh, this, or oh, it's dirty, you just
Yeah.
say thank you. You receive it, and then you build from there.
Yeah. So you have to be able to give as well as receive, but also I think it gets back to the issue of boundaries, right? Of creating those.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to create boundaries to be able to
And
say
that's
yes.
terrifying. And I write
Yes.
in the book that I literally Googled how to set my first boundary 5 years ago. I absolutely did that. And now I'm still, I think any of us that are in a state of transformation, and that's the one piece about being in a female body, that we are always transforming.
Yeah.
We are going from
From day one.
from day one, from a
Yeah.
maiden phase to a mother phase to a
Yeah.
crone phase. We will always be transforming, and this is just one of the areas that requires a little bit more of our attention and our invitation and our self permission to begin.
Yeah. I mean, we're premenopausal, postmenopausal, pregnant, not pregnant. You can go
Always
on
changing.
and always changing. And that can be maybe sometimes we've looked at that as something negative, but difficulty doesn't always have to be negative. It can be positive, right? It can propel us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in the book, I weave in so many stories of goddess mythology and divine feminine myth to support us that women have been beginning in one place and transforming and evolving to another place since the beginning of time. We are supported in that transformation. It just takes the courage and the step one.
But the other thing, or the other part of that, I think, is in the end, and I'm talking about the end, we live longer. We live 10 years longer than men, or 8.5 years, or whatever the statistic is on that bell-shaped curve.
I'd like to think that that is an invitation for those 10 years to be lived from the truest place of ourselves if we have that time.
Well, we only have a few minutes left. There's so obviously so much more to talk about. So, the book, where we can get the book, also the podcast. Just tell us about the platforms we can go to. Yeah.
Thank you so much. The book, Autoimmunity of the Good Girls, is available where your favorite books are sold. I am donating a percentage of my proceeds to the Society for Women's Health Research. I believe sometimes as hardwired good girls, it helps if we know that if we do something for ourselves, it's benefiting another. So I wanted that to be a part of the book experience. And because of how many interviews I did with so many amazing experts across modalities and lifestyle and scientists and soul and shaman and doctors and all of the above, I couldn't fit it all into the book. And so I have cut short 15-ish minute episodes, which are releasing every week. And it's called Behind the Page of Autoimmunity and the Good Girls. And that is where your favorite podcasts live.
Fantastic. 30
Thank
seconds
you.
left. You got it in. Great. Yeah, great conversation. And I appreciate it, as well as my audience. Sara, Hirsch, Bordo. Autoimmunity and the Good Girls, How Permission to Put Ourselves First Has the Power to Keep Us Well. That's the book. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathryn.